Hey everyone, welcome to the Human Cloud Podcast, the spot where entrepreneurs, innovators, and yes, you corporate warriors come to drive the freelance economy forward. So today we have Sean Ring. Sean is a fascinating entrepreneur as well as corporate leader. So right now he's a VP over at People 2.0, but prior he was the co-founder of Fulcrum, which Fulcrum was one of our industry's earliest aggregator, meaning aggregating multiple marketplaces into the enterprise. So with Sean, we're going to really hit on just the history of our industry and what's really changed in the past 2 years. So the first thing is that we're really going to hit on is the fact that, as I mentioned, aggregating multiple marketplaces is not new. The second thing is we're going to hit on what are the biggest challenges, and he's going to highlight two that I couldn't agree with more. The first is under-investing in change management. The second one is not having the social proof so that leaders can say, look, this person next to me did it as well, or look, your boss did it as well, which turns into the no one gets fired by hiring IBM dilemma. The last thing is we're going to hit on sort of the industry transformation, and what you'll see is that we're still solving the same problems and we still have the same value prop. But because of ancillary trends, our space is now a painkiller. And so specifically what Sean laid out, which it's one of those things when someone else says it, you recognize it, but you've already been running according to these principles for so long. And the first is that our industry started as a shiny object. So around 2016, 2017, 2018, it was cool, right? People were saying the terms gig economy, Accenture was saying liquid workforce, and then Upwork and Fiverr went and IPO'd. But that's what it was, right? Leaders were interested because it was shiny. We then turned into the gain phase, which this is where I was able to say, okay, the freelance economy, 50 to 90% cost savings. You can get experts in the building in 2 to 5 days. But we were talking from a place of, look how awesome this could be, where now we're in the pain phase. So companies are directly losing revenue if they don't adopt the freelance economy. And Sean so elegantly put an analogy that those that don't adopt the freelance economy in the next year are going to be stuck standing at the well wondering, where did my talent go? And the well analogy is so beautiful because where companies have found talent today is not where they're going to find talent tomorrow. And I challenge them to say it's going to be companies, but mostly the managers saying, why don't I have the people on my team that can do what we need? So everyone sit back, enjoy, and then go drive some change. Sean, what up, bud?
What's up, Matt? How you doing?
I'm good. Okay, so listeners, Sean is fresh from Black's Beach. We're fortunate he did put a shirt on for this, but I don't see a soft surfboard, Sean. Where's the surfboard?
There's 3 or 4 of them in the garage at home. I don't bring them to the office. But I can tell you that I have been prioritizing. So as you know, Matt, I have 3 little kids, and that has, 3 under 6, and that has cramped my surfing style over the years. But I finally realized that I can now since it's the summertime too, if I get up at 4:45, I can be at the beach at first light at 5:15 and home by 6:30 when my son wakes up, get him to school. So I've now prioritized doing that once a week to ensure that I get out in the ocean, because I live in San Diego and I'm an avid surfer. So I might as well, take advantage of it.
Oh, wait, you're saying you're out of the house at 4:45?
Out of the house at 5, up at 4:45, leaving at 5, first light at 5:15 right now, and we're approaching the longest day of the year here soon. So,
wow. I guess the good news is you don't have to shower because you're just going in the water.
Yeah, you still need to shower. Salt water doesn't feel great on your body all day, but that's why I installed an al fresco outdoor shower at my house. And it's probably one of the greatest features of my living environment that I have. So, yeah, it's like it does 2 things. It gets me the cold plunge, right? And I just, kind of trim down on the wetsuit thickness as the water's warming up. So I get a cold plunge. Plus I get to watch the sunrise and hear the birds and kind of do some meditation in the water, because you're just, generally you go that early, you're just out there alone, and it's just like majestic and peaceful. It's good for the mind, body, and soul.
It has not even been 5 minutes yet, and I already feel too foofy and too West Coast. I'm going to have to do nothing but talk to Southerners for the next 6 months just to recover from. The only word you didn't use, thank God, which was quinoa. But I think, is that now not cool? Like, is that now counter trend?
There's a good bit of quinoa consumption in my house. I can't speak broadly to the consumption trends across the West Coast or the state of California, but locally in the address that I live at, there's a decent bit of quinoa consumption. Although I've been trying to angle for more rice.
Oh my God. Do you have on your kids, on their forehead, does it say fair trade?
No, it says free range. Or no, maybe cage free.
Cage free, one below. I mean, with how expensive eggs have gotten, no one can afford the free range anymore. It's only cage free, especially you Californians. But listen, so we have 5 canned questions, Sean, and they're going to be softballs, okay? They're going to be so easy to answer, and I know your PR team has prepped you exactly what to say. Are you ready?
So ready.
I was hoping you'd tell me to F off, but I realized in California you would just say something probably like, I don't know, like hella cool or something like that.
No, I'm ready. In fact, we were just talking about, I'm actually excited because we haven't done any prep for this at all. We don't, we're 2 people who have known each other for quite some time and have been big advocates for the space that we're in and coming at it from different angles. So ultimately, I'm just excited to feel that whatever you've got and whatever's burning for you and your audience, if I can help shine some light or provide perspective, then I'm happy to do so straight off the cuff.
I love it. And so for you listeners, so Sean and I have, what's Sean, 5+ years now? It's funny. The first time I talked to you, I was getting Microsoft oatmeal. It was really nice. And then you called my cell. And so whenever I think of you, I think of that oatmeal. It was probably the only thing I liked about The Office, but it was pretty good. I would never make it myself. But so I want you, actually, we did a panel together. Remember that? That was like 6 years ago.
Yeah, that was a conference in San Francisco.
You want to know a fun fact with that panel? I went to Chinatown to get my hair cut, and I just said like thin and shave here, and she shaved my whole head. And so I had a buzz cut. Hadn't had one since I was in like high school, I think. It was terrible. So the first time you met me, I looked like total just jock, I guess you could use. So first,
I recall that now. You're bringing back some nostalgia of that, that clean, tight.
I'll never forget this shot. She literally just took the buzzer and didn't even bother with going to the sides first. She just didn't even ask her anything, just took it straight down the middle. And I was like, well, there it goes. Hopefully this is like a cheap cut, but I'll not get that back for a while.
Yeah, I've done that on accident with no guard on the beard before. Like just forgotten, then take one swipe and you're like, well, I guess we're done here.
Oh my God. So I want you to tell our listeners why the hell you're so passionate about our space. I then want you to go into your background, and then I want to go into defining sort of how you would define this space. So you cool with that order of why the hell you're doing this? Then your background. And for you listeners out there, I think you have such a unique vantage point in terms of you've been a founder, yet you've worked intensely within the enterprise, and you've also seen this space for so long now. So it's such cool visibility because you're coming at it from literally all angles. So I'll shut up now. Over to you, my friend.
Yeah. So, I guess the core of why I'm so passionate about this space anchors on a phrase that I think many of us have heard a lot, that is talent is everywhere and opportunity is not. And that has been something that has, I don't know if aggravated is the right word, but rather inspired, maybe that my looking in that and saying like that, why does this have to be this way? It doesn't have to be this way. And so I've kind of been on this mission to democratize access to meaningful work for people anywhere in the world. And I think a lot of the core of that like burning starts from when I had a job that I genuinely loved for the first time ever. And I felt like, wow, when I'm doing meaningful work and I'm working alongside people that I trust and who inspire me, and we're giving back to the community. And it had all these elements for like what I would define as like an ideal work environment for me. I observed how that made me feel, as well as what the impacts of that were on the rest of my life, because we spend so much time in our career pursuits that it's inherent to the game that it's going to have impacts of what's going on with you at work bleeds over, and you're just one holistic piece. So me feeling that for the first time and having that over a sustained period of time, and like actually waking up excited to go to work and happy about the people I worked for and what I was doing, I was like, everyone should have this. And so it was that in combination with seeing, really the inability for people who chose freelancing, consulting, side hustling, all these non-traditional ways of working that aren't, full-time, one employer, corporate ladder, 9-to-5 stuff, not having access to work for the largest and most powerful and emerging brands in the world. That really, I'm like, I got to solve this. So a lot of that desire, the burning for me comes from this desire to like have an impact in the way that people are able to make money, grow themselves, and live meaningful lives. Background. So that job that I was referring to was actually in the world of contingent labor management and compliance, which I'm still in today and has been a component of what I've been up to along this whole story arc. But that company is called IES, and they're based here in San Diego, and they're a small family-owned company. I found them on the best places to work list. I had never had any professional exposure to what's broadly referred to as the contingent workforce, or non-employee labor. And it really opened my eyes through that experience. So one, I've touched on, that company and the culture of the company, and all of that created a fantastic environment for me to thrive and grow, and ultimately launch my career. It was kind of a launch for my pursuits that I've been into since then. But it was mind-blowing how massive this contingent workforce is, and how the vast majority of people on planet Earth that I come in contact with that don't know anything about this space, including me at that time, are totally oblivious to the amount of non-permanent work that happens in especially in large organizations. And we might, we recognize these logos and we think, wow, that technology company has 100,000 employees, but little do we know they have 120,000 people doing work for them that are not employed by them. And so that was like a kind of a Russian nesting doll to like start to, every time you pull one out, then there's another one underneath, and it's peeling back all these layers and trying to understand all the suppliers and the infrastructure to manage this and how it all came to be. So that was just a fascinating thing. And then through that experience, my co-founder and I, a guy named Trevor Foster, fantastic, ridiculously smart guy, visionary, working at that company as well. And we went on an innovation project to them to figure out how they could adapt their business model to quote unquote rise of the gig economy. And that in turn ended up in us launching our own company called Fulcrum back in 2018. And the model for Fulcrum was pretty simple in that we were going to aggregate talent from numerous freelance marketplaces. We saw that in general, these freelance marketplaces, like at the time it was, we launched and it was just Upwork and TopTal and Catalent. But we saw them struggling to do enterprise business. So there was value for them that we were going to create a solution. And we really understood the inner workings and complexities of enterprise contingent labor management and this whole VMS, MSP thing that was pretty pervasive and, is adopted in probably 75% of large organizations. So there was value for the platforms for us to go build a platform and a model to walk them into these deals. And yeah, we did that for the last, 4.5, 5 years. We wholesale pivoted the business model at Fulcrum about a year ago, which is when I got off the train from an operator perspective. And I still, the company's still going. They're doing AI for strategy now. And I'm an investor and an advisor and helping them out. But I've since taken my talents to a company called People 2.0, where we have built and launched a product called Global On-Demand Talent, which takes some Fulcrum 1.0 flavors to it in terms of bringing freelance platforms into large enterprise programs. But we've also coupled that with direct sourcing software and are really helping customers start to move from playing defense on ICs and freelancers, right? These large companies often would say, we need to find all the ICs we're engaging in the organization because this happens pervasively. It's the Rolodex, direct sourcing model where all the smart people in your business know other smart people and they bring them in as independent contractors, but they kind of slip through the cracks and they're all throughout there, but nobody really knows how many or how they got in or really what the terms or how they're being paid. And this causes pain for procurement and HR and legal and compliance. So we're helping enterprise companies move from playing defense, like we just got to find these people and make sure it's compliant, to like, well, the world has changed significantly. And when we look at from the talent perspective, everyone from the customer side and HR and talent acquisition is saying, wow, there's this skill shortage, labor shortage, and we're in this fierce war for talent and all this stuff. But the reality is the talent themselves, many of them, of course, not all of us. I'm still in a full-time employee role, so I don't believe that, goes away. And there's still absolutely a place for that in the workforce mix. But many people are simply no longer happy with that model of full-time employment. And we've seen like really clear data over the past 5 to 10 years that shows that more and more people, after they've been able to gain, most times they've got some career experience or a lot, and they say, I'm going to take myself to the open market. I want to work on projects for multiple customers, but only projects that I'm really interested in that hit on where I want to grow and the skills that I want to deploy and that are exciting for me, but also lucrative, so they can pick and choose what they work on. And that's become a much more viable career path. We're still not there. That's part of the big thing I'm fighting for, Matt, is like continuing to make that more realistic, so that of the 65 million or 70 million people in the US who are doing some sort of independent work today, that my goal is to get at least half of those people to believe that doing that full time is a totally viable thing, and they've got benefits that accompany that, and they can live a full and happy and meaningful life working in that way. And so there's a whole lot of stuff to solve to make that a reality. That's what I'm up to.
And so it's cool that you mentioned the quote, talent's everywhere, opportunity is not. But when you were mentioning the democratizing access to meaningful work, 2 things. The first is the past month, we have really, really, really seen an influx of what I would call 100K plus. And we just posted about that.
I saw that.
Right? There's been a 27% increase. And actually, so the data, I want to make sure Steve gets the credit. The data comes from MBO's report in 22. A new one's coming out next month on Bitcoin. It's going to be fascinating. But, and these are people that are either already directors or on the path to be directors / VPs. So these are the top, the top echelon of talent internally and typically working at known brands. And so they have literally said, I would rather be an independent director or whatever it is than stay on this full-time path, which like that. I didn't expect this to happen this soon, to be honest. And so, but one theme that they've been talking about is, and it was funny, we were talking with one last week, his name was Sundar, and he would be a VP of growth would be his role, a mix of data analytics and growth. And I asked him, I'm like, okay, you just had a 10-month-old right now. And I basically said, well, money-wise, why wouldn't you get a job? And he actually totally flipped it and said, actually, now that I have maturity, I need to. And I was like, whoa, that is a totally different stream, because the norm is, all right, I had kids, time to get a job. I need to figure out the benefits. And his was the total opposite. It was, no, for my family, I need to be independent. Crazy. And so I want to call that out. The second thing is, when really defining meaningful work, it kind of reminded me of my first ever project was helping a manufacturing company become a PE firm by being the independent consultant in the background, basically doing all the grunt work and catching all the stuff that they couldn't afford to go hire a big M to do. It made me think of that. I was like, wow, that was meaningful. I had direct access to the people doing the work. I'm learning so much. So it was cool. Now, I really want to get into, what will the world look like when this is all complete? And what I mean by that is, we both know, and I really want to try to separate, because you and I are super fiery and passionate, right? And we're like, everyone should have autonomy and control of how they work. But I kind of want to separate it by where is the world going and what is the biggest blockers in our space? Because I know you and I don't believe the world should be 100% freelance. I know we believe that people should choose if they want to be freelancer full time, and there'll be more freelancers, but it won't be everything. But I really want to get into where do you see the world going, and what is...
So I do see the trends, these tailwinds continuing to blow in terms of what do people want from work. And the more and more we all become knowledge workers, if we look at the vast array of things that AI tools can do, and everybody's just hyped on GPT these days. But the reality is there's hundreds and thousands of AI tools that do any number of stuff that are on the market, which are really making us as a society become more strategic and advancing to much more of a heavy constitution of knowledge work, right? So we're going to be collaborating with these tools. I don't believe that I don't have a ton of fear around the jobs part of people being wholly displaced. I think those fears have happened at every technological innovation turn we've seen. But I think we will become focused more so on higher order tasks into aggregate, right? So, and I think that's a good thing. I think if we can all, there's no need for people to be doing data entry anymore. And there used to be people who spent their whole entire career just like punching stuff into either even pre-computers like data capture and entry. And, those things were needed. But I do think that human beings long for kind of higher order thinking and like trying to see a bigger picture. So I see that people in general are going to continue to want autonomy and flexibility out of their work. And it remains to be seen. We're kind of in this pendulum swinging right now, bringing everybody back to the office. And what does that mean? And I believe that it settles ultimately eventually in hybrid, but then also you have a ton of tools that are going to come out that will make meetings virtually feel like you're in person as well, whether it's virtual reality and haptics and stuff like that. So I've always thought that's coming at some point where you and I sit here and, if we jump on a Zoom or a Teams call or whatever, it's definitely better. We can still, see each other's mannerisms and read some cues. It's not nearly as intuitive as in-person communication and just like what you're able to accomplish together when you're with somebody in the room. But I think technology will eventually get there, and there will be almost no need to jump on a plane and go meet somebody physically, because you can actually, do in a digital space everything that you can in person. So people want flexibility and autonomy. They want to grow in ways that are meaningful to them. There's no one size fits all. So as those tailwinds continue to push, I think we're going to see more and more of big enterprise getting basically slapped in the face by their own negligence of these trends. Because even today, after you and I've been looking at these data points and following this space for 10 years, and the vast majority of large enterprise still isn't making any meaningful shift towards this, nor have they appointed people in strategic positions of power within the organization to do something about transforming how they attract and engage all types of talent and globally. So I think they're going to get slapped in the face by that when their old, legacy talent pipelines, finally dry up, and there's just a bunch of big companies standing around a dry well looking for water. And then there'll be a scramble, kind of a mad dash. So you'll have early adopters. You and I have had access to a number of these, but the reality is they're very, very few and far between of companies who actually get serious, see where this is going, and adapt to it. I gotta think that innovation around blockchain and digital currencies and cryptocurrencies is going to have a big part to play in this. The pandemic really proved that any that a borderless talent acquisition strategy is totally viable for anyone, anywhere. And the tricky parts of that, can be foreign currency exchange, and of course the world that I live in terms of compliance and stuff. That's all kind of nasty and complex, but it's totally overcomable even today. Maybe not at the speed and at the pace that we want, but I got to think that advancements in blockchain and digital currency is going to help facilitate efficiencies in that over the years. I really think that as it pertains to barriers. So yeah, I guess we're just going to see these trends continue. Like, where's the world going? It's going to be more flexible. It's going to be more autonomous. It's going that I just think that the power is going to be in the hands of the talent more and more, because the old world was these big companies, and their brand and their logo had all the leverage, and people clamored to have a career and a self-image that said, I work for fill in the blank Fortune 50, and I'm a career person there, and nobody really wants to say that anymore. And so as you've seen, like, the average tenure at a corporate job go towards 2.5, 3 years, right? Which decades and decades ago was significantly higher. So the average tenure at even a full-time job is going this way towards zero. Meanwhile, the average duration of an assignment for a freelance or non-employee worker is going from 3 months to a year and a half or two. Those two things are going to hit, and it's really like there's going to be no difference. And I think that actually is the way it is today. We just have to figure out it's how do governments tax people? How do they automatically collect their money? That's one of the biggest barriers, I think. I hear a lot, and I don't want to overlook this, but I don't see it ever in the world that I sit and have, and the view that I've had into freelancing and global talent platforms. I don't see any opportunities for taking advantage of workers. And all the time when I hear the government talking about really wanting to crack down on misclassification, and that that the people working on gig apps are being taken advantage of, paid less than minimum wage, etc. My thought has always been like, well, if it's not economically viable for you as the worker, then you would just stop doing it, and you have absolutely nothing that is tying you in there. So I figured that the capitalistic view of, people will do work that if the juice is worth the squeeze, and if it's not, then the app companies would have to incentivize them in different ways. And I do recognize that there are certainly some areas we should not totally lose focus of that. But you and I mostly are in this like kind of B2B world, not the B2C, consumer apps, drivers and delivery workers and TaskRabbit and stuff like that. So I don't know as much about that space, but everywhere that I look at in the world of independent knowledge workers, people set their own rates. People have, the talent is wielding the power in the relationship, in the sense that the companies need talent to get work done. And so, in this perceived, labor shortage and war for talent, I see the talent continuing to wield that power to an even greater extent. And I think that the more and more that happens, the more that like somebody like a CEO of a large company recognizes, CEOs have had as their top 3 challenges for over a decade. Talent is in one of the top 3 for a CEO. Yet I never hear a CEO talk about their strategy about freelancing or transforming how they look at and attract, engage, build talent communities. Like, they're never talking about it. So I think, we'll start to see that too. The big question with all of this, Matt, is like, when will it happen? Not if, right? And how long do we have to wait? How much pain has to be experienced before people really try to transform? And that happens in every facet of life, right? If you need to make, these are big structural things. I mean, I was talking to someone the other day about, if you think about resource planning. Let's just talk about like workforce planning and resource planning. And you're in a large company and there's all these like real, people are fighting for budget for headcount. And if they don't get budget for full-time employee headcount, then they're like water. They just fall with gravity and they're going to try to find ways to get stuff done. And then they're playing with like CapEx versus OpEx budgets and moving money around. And, a temporary worker doesn't actually come from the same budget that they didn't get for their FTE. So you just have a lot of these little shell games happening. So I believe a really big inhibitor is actually the basic infrastructure with which companies use for budgeting and planning. And, there's still a lot of companies are still looking, at 2-3 year plans, and the way the budget process is done, I think that there's a huge opportunity for dynamic workforce planning and budgeting. This person that I was talking about had an interesting idea about like, what about a credit system where I could get a budget? This is an EVP of transformation for a fairly large company. He's talking about, what about a credit system where we could secure a certain amount of budget, and then I, as the budget owner, have, basically full autonomy over, things happen so fast in the world today. Like what I thought I was going to spend that on 12 months ago actually makes no sense now, given XYZ shifts in either my perspective or real things that have changed in the marketplace. And so to be tied to these like kind of like legacy structures really, I think is causing some of the slow uptake in these things too. So the enterprise has a lot of nasty, complex problems to solve. And to be honest, I just haven't seen anybody from the enterprise organizational standpoint who seems to be truly, and not anybody, there are a rare few, like I mentioned earlier, but there's very few that are actually incentivized to take action around this. And so in the absence of that, we kind of just perpetuate the status quo for as long as it works until something gives.
When you say very few leaders are incentivized to take it reminds me of that analogy where it's like a drunk is coming out of a bar looking for his keys, and someone comes over, is like, hey, like, you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm just looking for my keys. It's been like 3 hours, right? And the person's like, you ever look over there? He's like, yeah, it might be over there. It's like, the light's right here, right? And so they're only looking exactly where the light is shining. And I think, that is a good point, that we're not, like, no one blames the freelance from an enterprise perspective, right? When things go wrong, no one's like, God damn the freelance economy, time to fix it. Instead it's, oh no, we couldn't get people in the building. We're spending too much on our vendors. We're spending too much on the talent. Our talent's leaving too fast. And we're kind of sitting on the outside being like, hey, we have a solution. But it's like, that solution is not directly within my line of sight, right? My CEO is not saying, take advantage of the freelance economy. Now, I will say, where we have seen waves is there has been waves amongst accessing the talent and being able to deliver. And so two of my favorite, cases, the access to talent has been, so the access to talent, one of my favorite ones was, North America's largest motorcycle manufacturer, building their mobile app for 37 different freelancers globally. And the Bluetooth engineer actually came out of Japan because it was really hard to find a Bluetooth engineer that absolutely loved motorcycles. Like, you can't find that in any other model. But the second one, which is very recent, and that is that you have a lot of professional services that are underbidding their jobs, and come delivery time, they're hosed. And so whether this is something like SAP, ServiceNow, Workday, all these various applications, they literally can't get enough people in the door. But through freelance models, you can spin up 70 SAP developers in under 5 days. And so it's literally the difference of losing business that you've already won. So those two things give me hope. Now, I love the analogy of companies are going to be standing around the well. Like, that is such a beautiful analogy of where'd it go, right? Where'd our talent go? Oh no. And I mean, most of the company structures around HR have been so that you have to incrementally change things. For example, an innovation might be, well, we created a digital alumni portal, right? Or we created a digital recruiting platform instead of actually going to campuses. Boring, right? Like, that's not actually going to change the fact that the well is in a whole different. And the only thing I would add is that when you say companies sitting around the well, I think it's going to be the manager. And so one of the secrets within enterprises is that for the most part, you could keep promoting moderate leaders. And as long as they weren't totally toxic, the teams wouldn't fully disband. And I think those managers that are kind of lukewarm or totally suck are going to absolutely struggle to find talent because they're not going to just refer to their existing HR system to bail them out. Those, and we've already seen it, those are the managers that are going to be struck, whether it's 6 months, 6 months to a year in, and they can't build the teams that they need to get things across. Those are the ones that I really are going to be stuck in the well. Now, we got 10 minutes, and I really want to, you built something revolutionary, and that was looking at the multiple marketplaces and enterprises needing to get into multiple marketplaces. I kind of want to step back and literally just say, why do enterprises care in the first place? And then what was the biggest challenge wrangling all of these freelance networks within an enterprise setting?
Restate the first question.
Yeah. Why do enterprises care? And then what was really in the way of broad scale adoption?
Say, why do they care? Why do they care about what?
So what brought you to the meeting in the first place, right? You weren't just showing up saying, hey, nice office. Why in the world were they reaching out to you in the first place? We'll start with that one.
Got it. Well, twofold. One, people are attracted to novelty. If you think about the enterprise, there's 3 reasons people do anything. 1, they're trying to move away from pain. 2, they're trying to move towards gain or upside. Or 3, there's a shiny new object that represents some novelty to them that they feel that they're hearing about, they need to be educated about it, and they want to learn about it. I would say the vast majority of the meetings that we got, which were plentiful, we launched Fulcrum and there was buzz. We would go to the SIA conferences and Upwork's there and TopTal's blowing tons of cash on, their marketing budget to be really like on panels and the biggest things. And, these clients are looking around like, wow, like this is a thing. I should learn about it. So we got a ton of meetings that were around that novelty, I think, motivator, right? Like something shiny and new is happening. I got to learn about it. And then you just qualify them out to like, are you, does this resonate? And are you motivated by one of the other 2 things? Like, I've got a lot of pain trying to move away from, or I see a significant upside in like enabling my business to do things they can't do today. So I'm going that direction. When it came to the ones that were serious, it was people like you and I, who, when we had a conversation, who happened to be in positions of where to some degree they were touching talent in general, but they were also charged with transformation, right? And they're looking at the way that their existing managers do things, and they're saying, we got to change the way we work. I mean, we are focused on all the wrong things. We're not talking about or driving towards outcomes. We see that talent is way more distributed and that they're flocking to these type of networks. And so they just shared that alignment from an individual level, right? So I think that was the critical thing, is like you find individuals. And I think this is how all of this works, is that we look at like organizations and their logos and their brand, but the reality is that there's individual people within them that are actually holding the cards and can do things that are interesting. So it was those individuals who happened to also be in positions that touched a couple of the key areas that we were in. And I think those people were genuinely like, they cared because they felt so convicted like we do about the world that is changing. And we got to, if this company wants to compete, we got to be changing with the world and not trying to swim upstream. So that's why I think they care. I think the hardest thing about enterprise adoption is, one, the underinvestment in change management, right? So looking at, okay, we want to do this thing and, we're going to make a couple announcements out of it, but like without, if they don't go and secure, and I guess in some ways I look inward to me and say, wow, I could have helped that champion to build a better business case, to secure more buy-in from the executive leadership team, to get professional people on this change management component. There's thousands of apps that go to die in the enterprise every year, right? And like people are buying all sorts of stuff, but the stuff that stays sticky, is much smaller population than that just, is a shiny object for a little bit and then is gone because of all the things that they underlook. But I think, so that change management is so critical, and not something that I was an expert in, and not something that I underestimated the size of that lift and how comprehensive and on it you need to be. The second thing is, the world operates on the currency of trust. And without a compelling enough story or message to get people to take a risk to try a new thing, the pool of people who are just naturally willing and capable and inspired to try something new and tinker and experiment is too small to create the kind of scale that you need to have like large, obvious organizational impacts. And so you'd find, big consulting, for an example, right? Like the trust that partner at that firm has with the CIO or the CEO is very strong. And therefore, when there's really important stuff to do, the person-to-person trust trumps innovation and risk-taking. And back to the incentives too, no matter how much I've seen large organizations trying to do agile transformations, which is well-intentioned, but by definition, a large enterprise organization cannot be agile. Like a battleship cannot be agile in the ocean. It takes a tack and it goes very slowly towards that, and changing course is incredibly difficult. So in the absence of being able to create these feedback loops, and I was going to touch on the incentives again. The reality is as much as they talk about it, people are not incented to take risks in large organizations. It is largely the culture of play it safe and you won't get fired, And so until those things get figured out in the recipe for like, we want people to take risks. And there's, examples like, within Alphabet, like X Project, which is now I think Google X, they're launching moonshots. That's the moonshot factory. That's literally what they do, is go and take risks. And there's, really good models for that of putting like a skunkworks operation off to the side of the business, letting them operate. Don't let them touch anything in the mothership. And those type of people are just a different breed. They go and they try really hard things, but they use data to make, their experiments. And then when it doesn't work, they're not tied to they're not attached to the outcome, because it not working is actually something to celebrate. And, cultures like that, they'll have big, parties to celebrate the death of an initiative that they proved, they had some assumptions and it could have had an outstanding upside, but they actually proved that it wasn't going to work for X, Y, and Z. And they celebrate that instead of tuck their tail and say, oh man, I had this great idea. It didn't work. I got egg on my face. And unfortunately, most large corporations still operate in that way, where there's no incentive to take risk. And so in the absence of that, it's really hard to build trust. And so you could get adoption up to a certain point, but it was really challenging to scale, and still is.
So, what I drew out from what you were saying, which, I never really thought about it this way in terms of how our life has changed in the past 5. But so basically over here, all the way to this side is like, hey, we were in shiny object time, right? And this was like, wow, Upwork IPO'd, like, wow, there seems to be a lot of like freelancers. And that's where most of the data was all on number of freelancers, right? And then we got into the gain aspect, which is where I could go company to company and say, hey, you're going to get 40 to 60% cost savings. It's going to be in under 5 days that you can get access to the talent. But still, it wasn't like, oh, wow, like take the checkbook out. Well, now we're in the pain aspect, which is, oh shit, we're down $234 million this quarter. How in the world are we going to reap this revenue lost? And part of this revenue loss is because we couldn't actually deliver the projects that we said we would. So now, fortunately, we're in the pain aspect of this, as well as with the Great Resignation. All that stuff was a force. But in the bottom, I kind of put like the graveyard, right? Of where at each of these levels where we've kind of been running into consistently is underinvestment in change, which I mean, hell yes to that. I think that literally what we do is when we go business to business, the ingredients are all the same. It's literally just getting those ingredients to mix in the right way for that organization. And it's literally just like business 101 of how to stand up a freelance program. It's business 101. It's like, okay, how's the demand gen? Well, guess what? We're not doing anything radical. We're just applying basic business principles, but we're investing in the change management aspect. And then second thing you mentioned was the social proof. So I love it, man. So now, okay, we got Rocket Round. And this is the fun aspect. You got 17 seconds to answer each question. The first question, if you were to rate yourself 1 to 10 on the level of how good you are at surfing, what would you say?
I am a 10 because I a long time ago set up a framework that success in surfing is, do I have the biggest smile in the lineup? If I was in an actual surfing competition that was judging technical skills and capability, I'd probably be like a 4. But I'm mediocre, kooky, and proud, and I just love being out there. So I'm winning when I just have a giant sky on that face.
That is so cheesy. Question 2: are acai bowls still a thing on the West Coast?
I think they're a thing. I never really adopted the acai bowl at scale. Maybe somebody underinvested in my change management around that. But they are a thing. It's not something that I consume regularly.
Gotcha. Okay. Question number 3: if it's a Friday or Saturday night, where can we find you?
This Saturday night, I will be at the Rady Shell, which is a relatively new music venue right on the harbor in San Diego Bay. And I'll be there with my wife and some friends watching a reggae concert, Stick Figure and Pepper. It's going to be rad. But most weekend nights, you'll probably find me at my house, getting my kids down by about 8 p.m. and then taking a deep breath and like, oh my God, what next? And then I've been playing chess a lot lately with my wife, which has been fantastic in terms of, it's better than just putting on some show and, zoning out and zombieing. So me and my wife are getting strategic. I taught her how to play. She absolutely loves it. And it's been great for me to get back into some chess action. So,
Sean, I'm going to FaceTime you with Farnia about that because she's all into reality shows. And so last night was Vanderpump Rules. And I
had to be subjected to that last night as well, too.
How many times did you hear about Raquel?
I don't want to talk about it, Matt.
All I will say,
the wounds are still open.
It's so funny. All I will say is that I was like, I can't take this anymore. So I went to bed and like, as I'm falling asleep, I can hear her like cackling by herself in the living room. And I guess it was a really good, it was a good episode or a good finale or whatever. But I'm going to try to make
absolute smut.
I just can't believe those humans exist. All of them. Like they're all, they all need something else. Okay. Actually, and this question, Sean, I've never asked anyone. So if you were in a band, what would you be? Like, what would be your role and what would be the genre?
I would definitely be the lead singer. I am a masterful MC, especially as it pertains to reciting other people's lyrics. So I've always enjoyed that. I'm a karaoke machine. You can catch me doing, late 90s, early 2000 hip hop and just like killing it. So I would definitely be the lead singer. When I went to Costa Rica many years ago, a buddy and I were like, we should start a white guy's reggaeton band. And it was like, so I'm going to stick with that. I would be the lead singer of a reggaeton outfit.
Can you please wear the dreadlocks? I will cancel you so fast. Oh my God. Please do that. And I'm going to have the biggest field day ever because you are the most, the reason that says, listeners, you are the most like inclusive and like diversity oriented person I know. And so I would love nothing more than to watch you put those dreads on and then immediately just get onto Twitter or wherever the canceling is happening at that time and just be like, Twitter mob, go. Please do it, Chuck. Please do it. Okay, next question. You have 2 more, don't you worry. three more. Favorite show.
Favorite show, like right now or ever?
Yeah. We'll go with right now.
Gosh, man. I'll tell you what I'm watching right now, and I found one with Whiteby that we're both watching that is Vikings. So I actually started with the later one on Netflix, but then we liked that, and now we're back to the one on Amazon Prime. So Vikings is pretty raw and just like intense, and digging that. I've been really enjoying personally all of the Star Wars spinoffs too, Mandalorian, Obi-Wan, and that whole world is fun, because I think as much as we focus on, and I got these little kids and I'm focused on business problems and all this stuff. Sometimes it's great to just like transport to a fantasy world for an hour and just like,
Vikings. Noted. Okay. Favorite book?
Favorite book. I just read a new book. I couldn't recommend it more for people listening to this. There's a book out, just came out a week ago. Seth Godin, if you know him, the book is called The Song of Significance, a new manifesto for teens.
Oh, okay. Last question. Ready? You ready? Favorite animal and why?
It's the lion, and because the lion is my spirit animal, and yeah. I guess that's as succinct as I can put it. I got a badass lion tattoo on my arm, but I'm wearing long sleeves, so I can't.
Oh my God! I'm gonna make a freelance economy tattoo club. I don't have one, but I now know really cool people that do. And so, actually, to be honest, I only know one other person in our space with a tattoo. But I'm always like, damn. That's pretty cool. Our nice boring space gets a little bit exciting. It's pretty cool. But I'll
show it to you sometime. It's got ridiculously great detail. I took care in finding the artist, and it's incredible. I am not an artist like that, but this guy put a beautiful piece on my arm.
Great. Show me on a surfboard. Yes. But where can listeners find you?
From the business perspective, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I'm kind of actively like not on Twitter and stuff like that on purpose, because it's not good for my mindset. So yeah, LinkedIn, Sean Ring, you will find me. I'm probably under something talking about launching and activating on-demand talent programs for the largest companies on earth. And I work for a great company called People 2.0. So you can find us around the interwebs as well.
I love it. Sean, thanks for hopping on.
Appreciate you, Matt. Good to catch up, buddy.